In this lesson, I want to go over what is known as privacy rules and user roles or permissions. So when you look at any application, and I'm telling you this is every application, has different user roles and permissions, meaning they have an admin role, maybe they have a manager role, and maybe they have a user role, and each one has different permissions. They are allowed to see certain pages, they're only allowed to see certain data, etc., etc. So a good example of this would be something like HubSpot. So when you come to HubSpot, you can imagine that there's a way for the HubSpot team to log into their own internal admin dashboards and see any data associated with HubSpot. Now, on the flip side of that, when you log into HubSpot and create your own CRM, you're allowed to invite team members. So HubSpot would act as maybe a super admin, you would act as a team manager or maybe an admin, and then you can invite your own team members who would be just team members or maybe they're just regular members. And each one of those has different roles and capabilities. So let's see how we can do that in Bubble. Let's say you have something where you need an admin and just a regular user page. So your client wants to have an admin dashboard where they can see users and all their information, and then you just have the regular user. So how do we set that up? So let's come to our data tab. And in this example, we have a client who wants an admin dashboard where they can see all of the users using their application. Great. Well, the first thing we need to think about doing is assigning a role to each user as they sign up and manually to get the admin. So let's create a new field and we'll just simply call it role. And we'll select text and create. Great. Now we have a role associated with each user. So let's come to our database. So you can see we made that test1 user in our previous example. Now let's assign it a role. So for example, we want this one to be an admin. So we'll just give it an admin role. Now note, doing just this doesn't mean they have special privileges or anything is different because we haven't done anything. We haven't made any rules. We haven't assigned conditionals to anything. So nothing has changed yet. Now, let's go to our workflow and actually assign maybe a conditional statement. Let's go back to our workflow. And right now, when a user logs in, they are directed to the main page. So they log in, they get directed to the index page, and that's all that happens. Say, for example, we want an admin to be directed to an admin page. How would that work? Well, we could do this two ways. One would be having two different workflows for the same button. So we could come here and assign a conditional at the button level or the workflow level, meaning these steps only get run if a certain condition is met. Or we can do it at the step level, which is what we're going to do in this example. So regardless, these steps are going to get run no matter what happens when the button is clicked, as we're not putting the conditional there. So we'll log the user in, and we'll go to index page, but we only want to go to index page if they're a member. So we'll define that conditional right now. So we'll say current user, their role is member. So now when they log in, if they're a member, they just get directed to the index page. But if they are an admin, we want to go to the admin page. So we'll select admin, and then we'll go current user, their role is admin. Great. So now we've assigned two different conditionals based on what the user is and our login. But how do we know what they are when they sign up? Well, let's go to our sign up page. So we'll select sign up and come into our sign up workflow, and we'll do something here that lets us know it's a member. So when they sign up, we actually want to default as a member, meaning that any user that comes along our application and signs up, they're automatically given a role as member unless otherwise said somewhere else in our application, or we manually give them an admin role. So we'll add another field, and the field we want to update is that role field, and we just want to type in member. So now their role should be automatically assigned to member upon a sign up. So let's test out what that looks like. Well, let's preview our sign up page, and we'll sign up as another user. Let's get off debug mode for now. And we'll do testmember@gmail.com and test123. Now remember, what happens when we sign up? Well, their role should automatically be stored as a member. So let's sign up. You can see that's loaded. Let's go to our database. And you can now see that we have this test member and their role is automatically stored as a member. Now, when we're doing this, the same principle applies. Say we had a name field, we can automatically store their name as whatever they input. It's the same across the board. However, we want to specifically assign as a default the role of member. Now let's see what happens when we log in as that admin user. So let's run as our admin. Let's actually go to our login page and just preview. Let's log in as that admin. So our admin is test1@gmail.com. What should happen when we log in with this admin? Well, let's see. We should be directed to the admin dashboard, and let's see if that's what happens. So we log in. You can see we are directed to a welcome to admin dashboard page, and that only happens if our role is admin. But let's take this a step further, because if anyone had this URL, they'd be able to get to the admin dashboard, and they'd be able to see all the information that would be displayed to an admin. We have no privacy rules set up, so we need to go fix that. So let's head to our database. Now we're in our database, and we can see this tab that we previously mentioned briefly in another lesson, privacy. But I want to go into it a little bit deeper here. Select privacy. You can see the only one that's predefined is the user's own data. So this user is the current user, meaning they can only see their information if the user that's logged in is the current user. So in order for our admin to be able to see all of the user's information, we need to define a new rule. Because right now, a user can only see their own. They can't see other users' information, and that's a very important rule to have. But let's give our admin the access to see everyone's data. Let's define a rule, and we'll type in admin and create. And what do we want to happen? Well, we want the current user's role to be admin, and then we'll allow them to see all the data. So we check if the current user's role is admin, and if it is, we're allowed to see all of the data. Let's see what this looks like in practice, though. Let's see if it actually works. Let's go to our admin page, and we want to display all the users. And see if you can't do this on your own. I want you to pause the video and see if you can't display the users using a repeating group like we did in a previous lesson, just to test your skills. But let's go forward and select our repeating group. And actually, as best practice, we want to put this in a group. And then we'll put our repeating group inside. Great. So we have that. Let's come to our appearance and select the type of content we're trying to display. We'll be displaying user information, so that will allow us to access all the user records. And we want to search for all of our users. So we'll do a search for type of user, and we can go ahead and close that. And now we have access to all that information. But again, how do we display that? Well, we have to have a text box. So let's select our text box. Let's only display the email, just to keep it short and simple. Current user cell, and we'll select their email. Now, if we run as an admin, we should be able to see everyone's email. So let's do that. Let's go to our database. We can actually run as that specific user. So we're on the admin page. We want to run as the admin and see what gets displayed. You can see all of the emails are displaying here, not just our own, which is exactly what we want to happen. Now let's run as a regular member and see what happens. So run as. You can see, perfect. That's exactly what we want to happen. We only want to be able to see our own information, but really that's not the case even. We don't even want a user to be on the admin page at all. While it's good practice to keep them from seeing everyone's information, that's not going to cut it. I don't want someone to access my admin page at all. So how do we do that? Well, we need to define a conditional when the page gets loaded. So let's come to our workflow on our admin page. And what do we want to happen? Well, on the page load, so we can come to general, we can select pages loaded. We want to check to see what type of role that user is, and if they don't have the proper role or permission, let's direct them off the page completely. So we'll select a navigation, and we'll go to a certain page. We'll go to the index page, but we only want to direct them off if they're a member. So only when the current user's role is member. Then they'll be directed off the page. And that's all we need, because if they're another role, then they can stay on the page and won't be directed, since we only have 2 roles. But once you get more and more roles, more and more permissions and rules, you want to be super clear. So we'd probably add another one that says, hey, if they are an admin, stay on this page or don't redirect them, something like that. But you get the idea. So let's come to our database and run as that member again and see what happens. So we'll run as, you can see we're on the admin page right now, and you can see we still only see our user. So let's run next. Now you can see this is green, meaning that this conditional is true. So current user role is member. It is in fact member, and that's why it's going to run. So we have the current user. You can see their information. You can see the role is member. So if we run next, it should drag us to the index page, which is exactly what it did, and that's how it should function. Now, if we run as admin, it should keep us on the page and display all the information. So we'll run next. You can see that conditional is now red, meaning it's not true, and that the current user's role is admin, and it allows us to stay on the page. So that's a basic intro to how privacy rules, user roles, permissions, etc. should function in your application. Again, it's very important to test your app as different users to see how it's behaving and see if you have everything set up properly. But now I want to get into my favorite part of this entire course, which is APIs and calling APIs and using things such as OpenAI's AI models, things like that. It's going to be super fun. So let's get right into the next lesson. I don't want to waste any more time. We have the foundationals. Let's start building some cool shit.